We made it.
We made it.
127K.
Good job, baby. Proud of you.
Yeah, proud of us.
Yes.
Proud of everyone on the team
Yeah.
that's partnering with us, and it's been a journey.
Mm-hmm.
And we made it the first quarter, 127K.
That's crazy.
It feels crazy to think and say, but
yeah, it's wild.
we did it.
So in
God did it, really.
Yeah, God really did it. And in this video, we want to tell you guys what the first quarter was like, how we raised the money, where we raised it, what it means to raise all of it. And so I think the first thing is just to start off by saying, what exactly does that mean, 127K in the first quarter? We've been doing it through cash and pledges.
Mm-hmm.
So we've been inviting people to donate $50 a month for 3 years. We have a 3-year window. Once we get to Durham, North Carolina, we'd love to focus on the work, which means that we need to have the finances to do so. So a lot of people that have pledged to give monthly are doing that for 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we in hopes as we get things off the ground running and create a sustainable model. And so that 127K doesn't necessarily mean we have all of that right now, but it means that we have pledges and a little bit of cash right now with pledges to get there over 3 years. But as we continue to raise this, our goal is 125K per quarter so that we can raise our big goal, which is 500K. So that's kind of what that means.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've learned so much throughout this first quarter, starting in January to end of March.
Mm-hmm.
In January is kind of when we hit the ground running of reaching out to people. But it wasn't until February where we released like the film and kind of made it public and announced it through socials and other public platforms.
Mm-hmm.
And so January was like the kick run of it, and we were just like talking with everyone, meeting with people, and learned so much about different things of funding, right? I work at Neighborhood Ministries, which is a nonprofit. And so I know a lot of different like grant opportunities and all of that a city or a space may offer.
Mm-hmm.
But we knew that it would be hard to get some of the public funding because we're not boots on the ground yet just in Durham. All the different projects that we plan on starting, the martial arts school, the creative justice learning community, we've all piloted them here in Phoenix with the different people that we serve and work with now.
Yeah.
But because we haven't done it boots on the ground yet in Durham, North Carolina, we thought it might be hard to build a case for support for public grants and public giving. And so we focused a lot on private. And so had spent our time between a lot of individual donors, but have come across like a lot of different other funding opportunities. And one of those is fellowship programs.
Yeah.
There are like multiple organizations that offer like this fellowship type program where it's like a 3-month coaching that they may give you, and then they'll give you like startup seed money.
And sometimes it might be like 4 months or 5 months or 6 months even, but a certain amount of time for coaching, and then they give you seed money. And there's a couple of those that we applied for. The seed money sometimes for these organizations may range from like $40K to $50K. And so we've applied for some of them. We applied for, first I'll say that we discovered this discovered more about it because I think we had like found Praxis, which is one of them, which I think that opens up this month and we want to apply for. And a friend of ours told us about that. And then it was the same day when we were meeting with that friend, there was another friend named Peter Watts, who's amazing. We met him in Christian Community Development Space, and he's doing amazing work in education in California, who shared with us his own journey and talked about how fellowships helped him get started doing different initiatives, and had like really kind of made it a point to seem like that's worthwhile looking into, and encouraged us to do that. And so that's what kind of created our vision of like, okay, let's go down this fellowship lane and dig into that. And so we applied for some this first quarter, didn't get them. I think we're waiting to hear back from one.
Yeah, I want to be super specific too, tell them the names of them just in case they might work for somebody else watching. One, Forward Cities, which is a program that's in North Carolina. They had a 3-month coaching program that was like almost like a paid internship program. We applied for that. Both of us applied for it separately, hoping that we had a 2-time chance to get in, but neither of us got accepted into that one. And then Camelback Fellowship was the one that our friend Peter Watts actually applied for and was able to get some seed money to help him get things going for what he has going on. And Kendall applied for that under the umbrella of the theological learning space community that we want to build. But unfortunately, we didn't get that one either. That one was going to be a $40K fellowship program. We don't know how much the Forward Cities one was. I know that it was paid. They would give you a stipend to participate in it. And then I think you got money on the completion end of it as well. And then Praxis is a $50,000 fellowship program. And again, that opens up at the beginning of April. We already sent an inquiry, so we're waiting for them to say, hey, applications are open, apply, that type of thing. But we reached out to several people that are part of the Praxis community, and they've all told us that they feel like we would be great candidates for it. So I'm hopeful for that one. But it can also be discouraging when you're applying and spending so many hours applying for these fellowships and then you don't get them. I told Kendall, I'm like, I ain't applying for anything else because I feel like,
it's part of the process.
It is part of the process, and it can be hard because you just you spend 30, 40, 50 hours applying for these things and then you don't get them. But then when the individual donors, we could spend 30, 40, 50 hours asking individuals if they would want to partner with us and maybe get 40% of those people to join us. And so I don't know, sometimes it feels like, is this a waste of time or not? Or how should, but at the end of the day, you just got to go through the door that God opens. So, but just wanted to give a little bit more detail on that.
Yeah. So those are like fellowship type programs that we were looking into, and looked into other private grants and stuff. We got a Candid account for a month, and Candid allows you to find different specific foundations and maybe family foundations that give and might link up with your vision and mission and the things that you're trying to do. And so there's a few of those that we were looking into and filled out interest forms, and I think haven't heard back from some. I can't even keep track of some of the names now, but I know that the what was it called? We applied for them. Re-Raise. The Re-Raise Foundation we applied for them and are waiting to hear back from them still, and they're just a foundation that gives to different efforts like these, and so waiting to hear back from them. The Creek Collective, which is more of a church planning, they help fund church plants type things, but reached out to them and said hey, is there any of this that could qualify for what we're doing and doing Christian community development work within a space and center, and still waiting to hear back from them. And I've reached out to some other foundations and filled out interest forms and going down that process. I know there was one person or one foundation, I think it was the Fox Foundation, I think in Durham, who we wanted to meet up with them, set up a meeting, but she was wanting to wait for us to get into Durham first before we met. And so there was that one, and that was pretty discouraging because we would have loved to at least meet them and tell the story. But a lot of the gifts that have come in have all come in from individual donations, despite our other efforts. Even other churches, and like I said, we're just still in talks with right now. I don't think none of our first quarter giving has come from churches, but all from individuals, which has been just so God and so grateful to see the generosity of others and belief in what God's doing in and through us, and kind of in our country right now, what we believe to be a pretty
national and regional impact of what we're attempting to do through Black South. And so, yeah, the individual donations has been, like Erin said, inviting people at $50 a month to give for 3 years. That window where we hope we can become self-sustainable with the different projects that we start.
I'll interject here really quick, just to answer it plainly too, because I know people watching this video will be like, well, how exactly did you raise $127K? Several people that we know often ask us, was it like the marketing? Like, was it the film that you guys did? Or like, how exactly are you doing it? And I just want to be super clear that for us and our experience thus far, it has not been one particular thing. It's been a culmination of everything that I think has built a lot of momentum. So in the beginning, we've invested quite a bit of our own money creating a film, like a 12-minute film that our friend went to Durham with us and captured footage, interviewed us, all of that to tell the story of Black South. We also set up a pretty polished website to tell the vision, our story. We have blogs. Like, we tried to, in my own background in marketing, tap the mic there, in my own background in marketing, just trying to get the social presence out there, because I know when people search and they want to know more about what you do, there's a percentage of people that will look to see what you already have created. We also spent quite a bit of time creating a 3-year business plan, following the guidance of Carlos Rodriguez, who has a little course that we spent $50 on almost 3 years ago.
He's head of the Happy Givers, I think, organization. That's great, and we look up to them. So he has this like online teaching video series that you can buy, where he's sharing some tips on how to get started, and that's where some of the 3-year business plan, all of that info came from, which was helpful.
And that was very helpful. We also created a pretty polished pitch deck. And so between our website, the film, the pitch deck, and a 3-year business plan, I think that created and has created like a wow factor for people that we are having individual conversations with and telling them about what we're doing. And then we follow up with an email that has links to all of that stuff, in addition to our giving link. And so I just wanted to say that part. We're going to say something else. I just wanted to say, like, that's the marketing, the robust marketing side that we have available, but it's not like hundreds of thousands of people are clicking on that link per se. You know, it's not like people are just like coming across our stuff and like, oh my gosh, I want to give to it. There's a lot of people too that, even though we had, you know, several hundred views on our Black South story film, we've had a lot of traffic on our website and all this stuff, there's still a percentage of people that we talk to that have not seen the film yet, that know that we're moving to Durham or know that we're moving. There's some people that think we're already in Durham. Like, I don't know how you thought that, you know? But it just tells you that, like, not everybody's going to sit and watch your whole thing or look at your website or look at your pitch deck or your business plan. So it has to be you following through with conversation to kind of fill in the gaps, because people, the way people consume content is a little bit jagged at times. And so you just can't expect, I think that's what I'm learning, is that you can't expect everybody to understand everything just because you put it out one time or 20 times or 40 times or whatever. And so it's this combination of that. But I would love for you to talk about how did we get the individual donors? What was that process like? Maybe talk about your process, and then we can go back and talk about RELIANT and how we went through that training and how they have like a platform and everything for us, for people to give to.
Yeah. I mean, I think what you said, it's a mixture of all the different things that we did, which is a culmination, which when we meet with people, we sometimes tell them, I feel like we can teach a course on this. Like, we could probably teach a class just on all the different things that we've tried and done and did, and hope to help coach and teach people to start their own community development projects too in the South. Once we get there, is another kind of long-term vision of Black South, is helping prep people to do similar work. But yeah, I mean, what I feel like what I'm doing isn't like that innovative or not that new or not that like here's the magic sauce type thing. And I know like your background, right, is in marketing and in corporate world, where I feel like and how I've been connecting with individual donors has just been part of the work I've been doing for the past few years. When I first was at Neighborhood Ministries, I had to like raise some of my own support to do the work at Neighborhood, and had met with like Kit, because I've like been involved in campus ministry things at Arizona State University, and so I've like seen like leaders ahead of me like raise support, and they always like talked about it, definitely as they like were encouraging people to come on staff, maybe of like giving vision for what it looks like to raise support. And then when I was at Neighborhood, Kit was like kind of just broke it down. I was like, here's how you should think about it, is like you have your you have like the major donors who maybe will give like one like big time gift, or maybe a church or organization, business. And then you have like your mid-range donors who may give like a mid-range type gift, and then you have like your individual donors who you may ask to partner with you monthly, and like again encouraging a timeline with that, and like when talking with people and inviting them to give or partner with you, that it's not like a forever thing in their heads. It's like, hey, like for 3 years you commit to this thing, so there's like a timeline in their head, like, okay, I can do that, yes. Like it's not a forever, right, type thing. Is kind of what Kit, who's the founder of Neighborhood Ministries, had like kind of shared with me and coached with me, and kind of I ran with that. And being at Neighborhood, and I had just seen God show up as I just did the work and tried to do the work, and reaching out to different individuals and people who are part of my story, and people who I've blessed, and other people who've like blessed me, and I'm grateful for in different ways of now being a part of what I believe God's doing, and have seen God show up a lot in that way, and then was just mimicking that approach in Black South and what we're doing. But just giving more time to it. It was hard for me at Neighborhood Ministries to give as much time to it, just because a lot of the work I do at Neighborhood Ministries and the people I serve doesn't allow me to give that time, but I had to be intentional, like, okay, for Black South to get off the ground, I have to carve out time. And so like on Fridays, I'll reach out to like 50 people a week, 50 individuals a week, and we'll have like a list of people that I either will call, or I will email them, or contact them through social media, whatever my connection may be, and share with them about the good news of Black South. And I think it's a timely thing to share with people, just in a space in our country where we hear so much bad news, and news that sometimes make us feel polarized, or news that makes us feel disheartened about the world, about the state of our country. It's like, here's some good news I want to share with you about Black South and the vision of Black South, of helping repair the harm that's been done to Black communities and neighborhoods in the South, and just sharing them with the vision that God's given us, and then seeing who that resonates with and desires to be a part of our story and partner with us in that way. And that's a humbling approach in the sense of like asking people to invest in this vision and organization that's not gonna see immediate results right away, in the sense, but invest in something that they see down the line is a humbling thing to ask and invite people to. But I think we've just seen ourselves like do the work, see what's the outline has been for past missions people, past other organizations that started, like following their outline and doing what we're doing and seeing God show up. And I think that's a big part of that's what allowed us to get to the 127K, and like again, like you do the work, but God shows up through different individuals and in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of things that have happened that we could never predicted. Like I had no clue I was going to reach out to this person and meet with this person, and they wanted to give from a fund that came down from their ancestors who owned slaves and wanted to now give to Black South. Like I didn't know that's what the result was going to be from reaching out to someone, and that's just like what God's doing in people's own lives. And that's why I don't discredit reaching out to anyone, because like I don't know what God's doing in people's lives or what's going on in people's lives individually, that they may want to contribute to what Black South is and is becoming. And so individual donations, reaching out to people weekly, 50 people a week, and just being on top of that. And then like again, Fridays are the main days because I still have our jobs. I'm still working full-time at neighborhood, still raising some of my salary even at neighborhood while also doing the work at neighborhood. And so Fridays are like the days that I try to give time to it on top of like the weekends. And so sometimes it's hard because it's like I can't follow up with everyone. So if you're someone who's watching this who's like hasn't heard back from me just yet, probably Friday or the other weekend you'll get a response from me, because that's kind of the time I carve out.
No, that's good, babe. And I'll even quickly share, because you shared that story of that woman who was given funds from her ancestors who owned slaves at one point. There's another family that we know that we were meeting up with about Praxis, the fellowship programs, what were hoping that we'd learn more about. And that family, we wound up telling us that God had been stirring in them. They're a white family, come from missions in Africa, and have since deconstructed and decentered themselves from their own whiteness and really trying to be intentional to listen and learn. And God began to work on them to divest some of the money that they were giving to White Missionaries, and to hold it and reserve it for people of color that would be doing mission type work. And when they had heard about Black South, in a random meeting that we were having at Kaleo at the time that they randomly were able to come to, they in that moment said, man, this is where that money should go to. And that wound up being a pretty significant gift for us. But again, it was just from an individual person who's connected to a family that just values giving to mission work, period, in their family. And they had specifically been wanting to reserve it for people of color. And so, I mean, you like you said, you can't really make that up. I couldn't have planned that, we couldn't have predicted that God would work in that way, but he did, and so that's pretty awesome. I will say too, were you going to say something?
I was just going to say too, like you said, we can't predict that, how God works. Just makes me, again, this next quarter want to be intentional of just being in prayer and sensing God's spirit, what he's up to, he's moving us, and all of that. It just makes you want to be in tune with all of that.
Yeah, no, that's good. I was going to say too, I feel like I'm learning how good of a team we are. I feel like because, I wasn't single for a very long time. I guess long is relative, but for the time that I was single, I was so used to being kind of the one-man show in that sense, where anything I was going to do is because I did it and I got it off the ground on my own. And now being a part of a team and doing something as intentional and significant and meaningful for us together collectively, I'm constantly reminded of how gifted we both are individually, but also how that complements one another. I say often to people that ask about fundraising that Kendall is just like, this is what he's good at. He's a relational human being that loves people. He's on mission. He lives like Jesus. He's very humble in that. Like, I could tell you're a little uncomfortable that I'm saying all of this, but it's just true. Just take it in. It's okay. But because you're about to compliment me, just give me a second. I'm not done. He's really, really good at that. And in a season 2 where we are working multiple jobs, myself, work trying to balance 3 different things, still pastoring at Kaleo, still fundraising with Kendall and I doing that together and working my community organizing job with Corazon feels like I'm spread out pretty thin. And so in some ways, sometimes I feel like I can't go as hard. I don't have the energy to go as hard as Kendall might in reaching out to people to schedule the meetings, because we both try to be at the meetings as much as possible. But what I am good at and where I can't help is like the marketing aspect and the follow through and a lot of the digital things. And those things just complement one another. And that's again why I can't reiterate enough, because we have some friends that are also doing nonprofit, also trying to fundraise and trying to figure out like, how did you guys do that? Like, I'm trying to figure out how to do that myself. And it's like, I can't express enough that it's not just one thing. It's both and. It's everything at once going. And it builds momentum. And I feel like in the second quarter, now I feel like we found our groove, and I feel like there's momentum there, and we don't have to work as hard to explain. I feel like what we're doing, because we know how to tell it. We know how to tell the story better now. We know what you say, what I say, when we pass it off. Even if I'm reading with somebody by myself, sorry, I keep tapping my mic. Even if I'm meeting with somebody by myself, I know the way you tell your part of the story, so I could tell that part to the person that I'm meeting by myself with, or vice versa. And that always feels good too. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I also say you because all of the aestheticness of Black South, like when I meet with people and they see like the business plan or the website, they see that like, oh, like this is very like aesthetically attractive. And that's all you. That's all you and your design, and being able to bring that all together. And then, like you said, I think it complements one another. To make it all work.
Yeah, I have a little list here. We already talked about what our marketing things were. We talked about like how you reach out to people. I will say there's a lot of work that goes into the follow up too. Like, the initial message goes out, but then there's the follow-up to get the actual meeting. And then when we actually meet with them, that's when we tell our story. And depending on what they know about us, we might tell our whole life story and how that led us up to the moment of starting Black South, or they might already be acquainted with that, or they might have already watched the film, or they might have already read the 3-year business plan. Like, that's why those digital assets are helpful, because depending on the person, again, everybody consumes content differently. Some people don't read or watch anything, and some people watch and read everything, and then we can still fill in the gaps in the conversation. And then we end off the conversation with an invitation for them to join us. And we typically say, like, we have been asking people to join us at $50 a month for 3 years, and we'd love to extend that invitation to you. If you feel like God would stir inside of you to give towards it or be a part of it in any way. And then they typically will say, I'd love to pray about it, or whatever it might be. And then we follow up with an email with our links there. And then in God's timing, they either give or can't give, or maybe they connect us to somebody else or whatever, I would say. But I would say out of all the people we've talked to, what percentage of people would you say have said, yes, I'd like to be a part of it?
Oh, it's it's like, because I feel like this different times I'll go back to back and meet with people, and they want to be part of the cause and give, and then others who just aren't able to. And so, I mean, it's too hard for me to say. I think we have to go back and really look at all of our numbers. I want to say maybe like, are you talking about from the people that we sit and talk with, or the people I just reach out to in general? Because the people that I sit and talk with, that we sit and talk with, it's probably about like 70%. It's pretty high. I feel like people who say yes, they want to give, and they may not partner with us at $50 a month, but they might just give a one-time gift as well, which is also super helpful to the cause. And but like the other organization we're using to benefits and like right on their payroll, all of that stuff is called RELIANT. And they also do a coaching session that's like, I mean, I guess you can decide how long you want their trainings to be. But it probably took us maybe like around a month or maybe or so to finish like these online trainings they had, which was like a lot of like the individual donors and reoccurring gifts and reaching out to people, making phone calls, they're kind of like coaching you through all that. And then they give you a coach who you then practice with and kind of like helps you through the process. And he had you fill out like, okay, like, well, what's your guys' goal? And they have it all down to a science of like, oh, you need to reach out to X amount of people to reach this goal. And like, so like that number, right, I think is 0.04. And so if you like do 0.04 times X amount of people you plan on reaching to a month, it'll be that times 0.04% of people who would actually maybe say yes and give to that. And I will actually say that I feel like that, whatever that science is pretty accurate of, I think, the whole people we've reached out to in this quarter, probably like 4% are yes, reoccurring givers from that.
No, that's really good. And I would say too, I think what's really helpful for us, because we were like, to have a nonprofit, obviously you need 501c3, a tax exempt status, which we were working with a lawyer to do that, and we paid out of pocket for that. You also have to have a state tax exempt license as well as a solicitation license for grants, and we're still in process for those two things. But just even knowing that, because you have to kind of wait for all of that to happen, we have to wait to get our bank account created for those things, which then just like prolong the time we could fundraise directly into our own bank account. So having something like Reliant was like a game changer for us, because we could start fundraising right away when we wanted to launch in January. Because otherwise, if we didn't have Reliant, we probably would have started fundraising mid-February, beginning of March. And that would have been $127K not raised. You know what I mean? And so with our $500K goal, our, trying to raise $125K per quarter is what we're up to. And so having Reliant is very helpful. I will say it's like made for the church planners, the missionaries, it's really made for that, but they do work with people like us who have this unique like nonprofit where, we don't really want to take care of or think about our benefits and payroll and all that type of stuff. The payoff for them doing something like that for us is that they get 10% of what we raise. And so there is this like catch-22 as well, because there are some donors that want to give larger amounts that don't want Reliant to take 10% of what they're giving to us. And so that's the beauty, I think, of having our own bank account, so that the larger gifts that really intentionally don't want 10% of what they give to go to Reliant can give directly into our bank account, and then we can kind of offset it however we need to for payroll and stuff when that happens. But just to even communicate, Kendall's gonna go on Black South payroll come September, I believe, and then myself in January. And so that's kind of why we're also rigorously fundraising to work towards that. The idea of Kendall doing it in September is that he'll be able to fundraise and focus on Black South full time. And I really do believe, because I feel like there's probably 6 or 7 churches that are pretty promising and that they want to give to Black South, but with churches, it's like they have to talk to their board, they have to relook at their budget, they have to talk to more people. There's just more barriers than if you're talking to an individual and they just have to talk to their partner, or they themselves just say, yes, I want to give. They can do it right then and there. But I do think that we're going to start to see some of those seeds that we planted in conversations with churches sprout probably this quarter and the one after it, I think, which, I'm just excited to see what God does. And I think what would you say the big lesson you've learned in this first quarter as you reflect on it going into the next?
I mean, I think the big lesson personally for me hasn't been in terms of how to fundraise or how to raise support, or again, how to build a team. Again, Reliant, even their training and all this too, it's a reminder that we're building a team, right? The word fundraising, I'm sometimes like, I don't know if I like that word, but it's like we're building that team of people who are joining with us in this mission and vision to bring vibrancy, well-being, and development to historic Black communities and neighborhoods in the South. But so outside of the raising support and building a team type thing, I think the lesson has been for me is gratitude, and it's being grateful. I think right as we're nearing the end of the first quarter and like thinking, okay, we may not be able to reach our goal, right? You can stress out, like you want to feel like, okay, let me maybe call more people this week, or let me put in X amount of more work on top of still working job, all the things, all the stress that you feel of all of it. But had a moment, I think, where it's just like, okay, let me let go and relax for a second, and like had to shift my perspective and thinking like, man, like how grateful that we are that we raised, I think it was like 115K. I think it was maybe less, a little bit less than, I think it was like 108. Then, and I was stressing about it, is that we raised like 108. And so like, I'm grateful about that, and then just learn and just learn from like, okay, like we reached 108, what does that mean? Like we didn't reach our goal, how can we like maybe shift some of our strategy and all that this next quarter? How can I just learn from it instead of stressing about it so much? And that shifted perspective of like, let me take a learning posture from it and be grateful was like a huge lesson for me. And I also think we share with people that this whole process, it doesn't feel like there's a lack of skills we have, or a lack of experience, or a lack of knowledge, or even connection to resources and assets. I think the challenge is just the emotional and mental roller coaster of it all is what the challenge is, and learning that it's a process and it's a testing of the faith, and seeing how God provides for the vision that he's given. And so like being formed throughout this process, I'm trusting and believing is what's going to make us the leaders that Black South needs throughout this process. And so I feel like that learning of like being grateful and taking this opportunity to like learn if we didn't meet the goal was a big lesson for me. And I'm like, man, I have to take that into when we're leading Black South, and if we develop a staff team under Black South, like when other people are stressed about not meeting goals or this or that, like, okay, like how can we be grateful and then just learn, right? And walk people through that. Since I've gone through it myself throughout this process, has been something that I'm taking from this next quarter. That along with, okay, let me really try to be in tune with God and how he's moving instead of trying to fight and wrestle. It's like, okay, God, how are you moving? Identify the people you think I need to reach out to, like all of that, like, so I don't put in extra work, has been like another lesson too, just taken to the next quarter.
I'll answer this question too, but my other question is, in what way do you feel like doing this process has impacted us, positively or negatively, or just like what's the learning with that too?
Yeah. I don't know, how would you answer that?
Well, I asked you first. Well, I'll answer the other question and then I'll give you time to think about it. I'll say, I think my biggest lesson, which I think is kind of tied to how it's impacted us together, is it's just like a big step of faith. I've never been this version of Erin. I was talking to my therapist about this recently. It's like, I've never been this version of Erin who's trying to raise money for Black South, who's trying to transition pastorally out of one job, who's also still working a full-time job and something else that's been quite stressful for me. And this version of me that's just heightened stress, I feel like, is a version of Erin I'm not used to, which then the way I show up in our own partnership together feels different and kind of clunky at times. And just like, honestly, the up and down, the emotional roller coaster of like, okay, like getting stressed out about how much money out of pocket we're spending because we don't have the in-bank cash yet to pay ourselves back, or maybe you thinking we don't need to pay ourselves back just yet, let's hold off on that. But then I have my own experiences of like doing businesses and stuff before and not paying myself back and regretting that I didn't do that sooner than I would have hoped. And so just like, I think it's for my own self, past traumas are just like quite triggering in this process. And for me, I think it's been really helpful, one, to be going to therapy, and two, to have a partner that is just like doesn't carry financial stress and trauma the way I do, which is just this reminder to, like you said, like let's relax and be grateful for what is, and know that this experience is not like the last one I had, so I don't need to be like projecting that onto this experience. And I just find myself in a very honest, transparent way, just like stressing about that, like how are we going to pay for this, that, and the other? We keep having to pay out of pocket for Black South. I don't want to keep paying out of pocket for Black South, and largely too because I kind of manage the finances for us together, and just like there's so many variables and nuances to all of that, because it's like wanting to, I can't keep doing the 3 things I'm doing for the rest of this year, so I know I need to make an adjustment of some sort, and then trying to figure out, or how are we going to pay our bills if I don't have this job or that job or whatever, is that has been quite stressful for me in all of this. But I think what's helping me get through it is remembering that God is a God of abundance, and I think I'm being tested to believe that, and to believe that this isn't like what I've gone through before, that this is a completely different thing and this is new. And I do think too, like that's something that we also want to spend more time doing, is just doing preventative check-ins with our marriage counselor as well, to just make sure that we're brushing up on our communication things too. But yeah, I think that's probably been a big thing. I think that's me answering both questions a little bit, but that's probably the thing I've noticed of how it's impacted us. And then I think the big lesson I'm learning in all of this is like, man, you can't tell me like on the last day, like literally it was probably 6:30 p.m. On March 31st, Easter Sunday, and we were watching a show, and you just randomly looked at our dashboard on RELIANT to see how much money we raised. And it was really good friends of ours that had decided that they wanted to donate $1,000 a month, that just pushed us over, like well over our goal. Like, what?
127K.
It just pushed us to 127K, and you're just like, what in the world? Like that experience on the last hour, and I kind of knew in my heart, like, man, like we came close, 108, and we jumped to 115. Like 115K is still really, really great. It's not 125, but it's still really, really great. But then when you get pushed over to 127 in the last hour, on the last day, you're just like, God is with us. That is what I've learned in this first quarter, is God is with us. And he's probably going to do it a different way this next quarter than he did the first. And it's like you said, just turning over every rock in faith that you just never know what God's going to do or how he's going to do it. And it's not just us, it's all of you that have joined us or want to support us and have been praying for us and all of this. It's all of us together, like being a team to do this. But anyways, I'll give you a chance to answer it too.
Answer it. I mean, it was a super blessing to see in that last hour and the last day of the quarter, you guys show up that way. I also think it was kind of fitting, like if you remember, the first gift that came in from RELIANT was from family on our side. I don't know if they knew exactly what they were giving to. I think they were giving us something else.
Yeah, Kendall was like, I think they thought they were giving
to me at neighborhood, but we gave to RELIANT, which was fine.
Yeah.
But it was kind of beautiful because they're also like the oldest family members on my mom's side. And as what we're doing is this continuing on, like the narrative of our ancestors, felt it was fitting of that. So it was to start the 125 goal for this first quarter, and to have really good friends of ours that we will walk life alongside with, help kind of bookend for that first quarter is kind of beautiful. And I think there's been a lot of moments and things like that we just haven't had the time really to reflect on, and to just because of all of the things we've been occupied with, to actually sit and reflect on the meaningfulness of each gift, and thanking God for it, and thanking the person and you all who have given. And so I definitely want to carve out time for that this next semester to really reflect on the meaningfulness of it all. But I mean, I piggyback that also with, I think, us in this process is also teaching us, and us working together in this type of way of founding Black South, of like how that will impact future working relations too. And so we have the opportunity now to like start good rhythm and all of that, what that looks like, which I think we've somewhat been trying to be intentional. Like, okay, like this is our time and us time, right? We kind of will, without communicating it, kind of weave in and out of like, okay, we talk Black South, we don't talk Black South. When you do this, we're doing that. We're just focused on being with one another, or doing this right now, and have been good at that. And so just having that time for us to pouring into who we are as a married couple, I think, to answer your other question, and yeah, I think learning about each other's strengths and the skills that we bring and all that has been really good and helpful as well. Yeah, does that answer your question that you were thinking?
I think it answers this as best as you want to answer it, so that's fine.
I can't remember the whole question.
Yeah, no, I think that's fine. I don't think we have to draw it out anymore, but it was just more of, in what ways have you felt like this process has impacted us positively or negatively, which I think you answered.
Yeah, I think it's impacted us in a positive way, in the sense of like when we see each other stressed and down, like that just allows us to learn of how to take care of one another. In the future, in different times, I remember looking up, okay, how to take care of my wife when she's feeling X and she's feeling Y and Z. And it's like different things I'm learning. I think like we're learning of how we can take care of one another throughout this process that's bringing stress to us both in different ways.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, I think the negative, if there's any negative, is just like, yeah, like how can we be more intentional about like carving out that time for us, type thing, because we can get caught up talking Black South, right, the whole time, or talking finances the whole time, or talking this or that, or whatever, stressing us out, instead of just talking about one another and life and things that bring us joy.
Yes, amen. Sorry. I was going to say, I imagine too that when we can both do this full time, it'll be so different. I feel like because we're being pulled in like 3 or 4 or 5 different directions right now, it just is harder. But like when we're both doing it full time, and imagine we set our own meetings, we talk about Black South, we go do the work, and then we just it's just us, like when Black South becomes our only job, I feel like it will be easier to create those boundaries around our own time and have our own rhythms. But right now it's just a hard year to work towards getting to that.
Mm-hmm.
And so yeah, anyways.
We're now in the second quarter of it.
Yes, we're in the second quarter. Our goal this year is to get to 250K. I think we're still at 127.
Mm-hmm. Still at
Technically,
127, I believe, right now.
Yeah, this weekend was very busy. We had a lot of conversations with people. Several people wanted to join us in this work and pray about what they might want to contribute. And that's our sign to end. It just got the low battery saver notification. Yeah. So we're going to end this video, but we thank you for watching and thank you for being a part of our journey and thank you for helping us get this far.
Yes, thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Again, we see this as you supporting the cause and mission and vision and the people who are in the South and the communities. And so thank you for supporting us and doing that work, but also you're supporting the vision and the people and the mission that are going to be impacted by it directly. And so thank you for the lives that you're impacting already.
Thank you. We'll see you next time.